Notification volume 0%.
Good afternoon, and welcome to Tales of the Blind with Blind Prime. I'm your host, Blind Prime. For today, I have for you tales about why I wear what I've nicknamed the blind man's helmet. This is it's a +2 hat of protection, as I nickname it. The reason I wear this hat is because even though your cane can tell you everything that's around your feet, and your dog can tell you everything that's around you, it's not always able to tell you what's hanging low. And my want to wear helmets comes from years ago, back when I was in college, and I was riding my bike on campus. This was back whenever I had lost a lot of peripheral vision, but I still had plenty of tunnel vision and could see pretty well enough to ride a bicycle. Not well enough to drive, of course. And I'm riding my bike on campus, and a squirrel runs in front of me. Now this is campus in the middle of summer on a Saturday. So if you can think about that, you people who've gone to college and stuff, you understand that campus was abandoned. The only thing that was accessible on that campus was the library. Sure, just lay down. So when I went to, I'm riding around on campus, a squirrel runs in front of me. I zig when I should have zagged, and I ran into a illumination pole, a pole with some lights on top of it, a light pole. The thing is that this campus decided that it would be really unique and interesting if all of their light poles weren't circular. They weren't round columns that went up and shone light. They were square columns that go up to have lights. And if you can imagine, the reason you don't have square column light poles is because sometimes somebody can run into them, like I did. So I ran into this square light pole. Now, I had a 1 in 8 chance of hitting it on a flat side, or actually a 4 in 8 chance. Half of the time I'd hit it on a flat side. It'd probably bang up my head, but not really cause much permanent damage. My lucky self hit it on a corner, so I got it wrong. I flipped tails when I should have flipped heads. So I zigged when I should have zagged, and I tailsed when I should have headsed, and hit the corner of that light pole. Bam! Just rung my bell pretty good. And now I just kind of sit there stunned for a moment. Put my foot, my foot was on the ground. I managed to stop myself from falling over off the bike, but my head hurt really bad, so I went over and laid down on the sat down on a nearby bench and put my head on my arm. And when I picked my head back up, my arm was bloody. And I'm like, oh, well, crap. And the thing is, though, is all the buildings around me were locked. This is the middle of summer. The only building on campus unlocked was the library at the other end of campus. I couldn't walk my bike that far. I wasn't feeling up to it. So what I did is I told myself, I'm like, all right, you've got to power through. The only way you're getting help is if you power through. So I powered through, and I got back on my bicycle, and I rode it to the library. When I got to the library, though, I didn't have the strength anymore to carry it up the stairs. And I get to the bottom of the stairs in the library, and I'm done. I'm so tired. My head's hurting like crazy. Things are getting blurry. I have tunnel vision, more so than normal. Things are going into grayscale. I'm definitely entering the first stages of what I assume to be shock. And I need to do something. I need to get myself in a place where I can start taking care of myself, or others can start taking care of me before I end up in a bad spot. No, I go up the library steps because it's the only bathroom I know of, and I need to clean my hands, and I need to clean the wound, and then I need to get an understanding of how bad things are. And I go up the stairs. I walk into the library, and the lady behind the desk, or the people behind the desk, there were multiples there that day, go, hello, and I go, hey, can one of you go out there and pick up my bicycle? I've had an accident. I need to go to the bathroom and wash up, but I don't want to leave the bicycle out there, and I'm too weak to lock it up. Can one of you please go down there, pick up my bicycle, and either lock it up for me or bring it inside and set it here so that I know it won't be stolen? We're not allowed to touch other people's property, is what I get in response. I'm like, please, guys, I'm bleeding from the head. I need your help. I need your help right now. I don't know if I can, I don't know if I could do that. Go out there and pick up the bike, but I know that I'm borrowing this bicycle and I'd hate to lose it. That'd be really bad. Can you help me? We're not allowed to touch other people's property, is the response I get again. And I'm sorry. And I'm going, all right, cool. So you're sorry that you can't help me. So I walk outside. I'm angry. I'm enraged right now. And I'm like, all right. So I've practiced anger management skills throughout my entire life. And I understand that anger can be a tool. You can apply that energy towards anything. It's just don't apply it towards destructive means, or means that will leave you in a worse situation than you were before. So I took that anger energy and I applied it to making sure the bike wasn't stolen. And I walked outside and I walked down the stairs and I picked the bike up and flung it on my shoulder, walked back up the stairs, walked back inside, dropped the bike on the ground and pointed at it and said, well, make sure it doesn't get stolen. If you can't touch it, you can at least watch it. And then I walked into the bathroom. What are you doing? And I went to the bathroom and I cleaned my hands off and I washed my face. And then I looked into the mirror and apprehensively saw a tiny cut on my head. And I'm like, oh, it's not that bad. But let me see if it's deep. So I put anyone who squeamish, just go ahead and fast forward a couple of times. I put my hands up to my head and then I split the little wound apart. And I saw the glimmer white, pearlescent white of bone, and knew at that moment I had done something bad to myself. I'd done something really bad to myself. So I called up my grandma. She was a nurse practitioner, and I go, Grandma Kitty, I need some help. And she goes, what's wrong? And I went, first off, don't tell Mom. And she goes, don't tell your mother what? And then I hear on the other end of the phone my mother's voice going, what are you not supposed to tell me? And I'm like, Well, Grandma, I hurt my head. I need stitches, I think. It looks like I definitely need some stitches. But I can't afford the medical. I can't afford to go to the hospital. We don't have that kind of money. Can you come up and stitch me? I need some stitches. Can you show up and stitch me up? And she goes, sure, sweetie. Me and your mother be right down. No, not Mom. Oh, but I need the help, and she's a paramedic. Gonna hear about this. So I go to the library, and not the library. I go to the counter at where the individuals were who weren't allowed to help me. And I go, excuse me, can I get some sort of a bandage or maybe a first aid kit or something so I can mop this up? And they're going, what's wrong with you? Why couldn't you got your bicycle? Why are you having such a hard time? And I, without saying a word, put my hand up towards my head and then split my wound apart again so that they could see the gleam of bone. 3 of them down. Out of the 4, 3 of them just hit the ground. 1 of them took out their chair and their coffee cup. Don't you be screwing with my camera. It was kind of funny to see, but at the same time, I did not have the. I was fatigued. I was not doing well, so I really didn't care. I was just like, I need some assistance, please. And I got out the phone and called my roommate and said, hey, I need some help. I need you to come over and pick me up. I've had an accident. My roommate goes, all right, where you at? And I'm like, the library. And then I woke up on the floor with a woman standing over me saying, hey, are you okay? I'm training to be a nurse. I'm administering first aid. Are you okay? And I go, yeah, I'm just a little shocked. And, I'm just trying to breathe. And she's like, medical's on their way. I'm like, oh, not the medical people. That's money I don't have. I've already paid for my classes and then exhausted my funds. I've got to eat. I can't afford anything with medicine right now. And I've got a medical personnel on the way to stitch me up. And she's like, well, medical personnel will be here momentarily. And you're just like a movie. She finishes saying that, and a bunch of paramedics come running in with a few police officers. And they come over to me, and they're like, are you okay? And I explain to them what happened. And the police officers are a little worried. And I'm like, guys, don't worry. This was my bad. I should have been more careful. The school's not getting sued over this nonsense. This is me. And they calmed down a little bit after that. And the paramedics just wanted to make sure I was okay, and they were about to pick me up and carry me away, and I'm keep telling them like, no, I got a nurse practitioner on the way, and they're like, well, we got doctors at the local hospital, and I'm like, guys, I can't afford the local hospital. I don't know how many times I keep telling you this. This isn't Canada, this is America, where a kid like me who barely has any money to eat on will get screwed for the rest of their life if they go to the hospital. No, thank you. I don't want to go there. I don't want to have my pocketbook murdered while I'm trying to fix my head. No, thank you. I don't appreciate that. And that was the moment where my grandma called me to let me know that they were about halfway there, and they were hauling ass, according to her. Mom was redlining the engine. It was going above 90. And I'm like, oh my God. And I go, Grandma, there are some paramedics here. And she's like, oh, I love paramedics. They always have the nicest stories. I'm like, Grandma, they're trying to take me to the hospital, and we can't afford that. And she's, oh, well, that's not good, Max. That's not good at all, because they're just going to pick you up and put you in that ambulance. I mean, you can decline help, but if they just consider you mentally unfit to declare yourself that you don't need, to say you don't need help, then they're just going to put you in that ambulance and carry you to the hospital anyway. Well, then talk to them. And I passed the phone to a nearby paramedic. I'm like, hey, Mr. Paramedic, here's a phone. Talk to my grandma. And he gets on the phone and he's like, hey, yeah, we're going to take him to, oh, okay, all right. Well, so long as he's in good hands. And then he passed the phone back to me and like, Grandma's coming to get you. You're lucky you have a nurse practitioner as a grandmother. And I went, yeah, and she's got my mother as a paramedic in the passenger seat. And he's like, oh, well, you're lucky on that end too. And I went, no, I'm not. That's my mom. I'm not going to hear the end of it. And he's like, oh, well, in that case, yeah. I'd say you're about 50% lucky today. I went, yeah, I'll take that. 50%. So I get home, and roommate picks me up, ambulance leaves. I get stitched up later that night by my grandma in my computer chair in my dorm room. Actually had one of those little eraser markers, the little ones that spit out the white stuff so you can erase pin marks. I had to use one of those to grip in my mouth. That was not fun. But I mentioned this story, and I explained this story to let you know why I started wearing helmets. I started wearing helmets because of that incident. I never wanted another scar on my head. And then I got another scar on my head years later. I had lost more vision. I was in a new place. I was walking around, coming home towards my apartment, walk, tap, tap, walk, tap, tap. It was about 10 o'clock at night. I had just gotten home off the bus from some late classes, had done the mile walk back to my apartment. And this was years later. I'd moved far away from campus by then. And I hear a few gunshots. Down at the end, my apartment complex ended in a chain link fence, and on the other side of that chain link fence was another apartment complex. I heard gunshots, followed by a racket at that chain link fence. It sounded like people jumping over the fence, like climbing and jumping over, followed by fast footfalls, like 4 pairs of feet moving quickly towards me in my direction. So I start going walk, tap, tap, walk, tap, tap, walk, tap, tap, and I haul ass. And I start almost running back to my apartment. I know where it's at. I count my steps, but I wasn't counting my steps well enough that day. I made the mistake of not counting my steps well enough, and I turned 4 steps too soon to get to my apartment door. And when I did that, I don't know if everybody who watches this video knows or not, but a lot of apartment complexes, at least, especially in the state of Florida, have open-ended, they're open air. So you get this, for the bottom, you got this little walkway area, and there's doors on your left and doors on your right, but each end of the walkway is open air. And then above on the 2nd floor, it's the same thing. And if it has a 3rd floor, it's the same thing. And when these, to get to those next floors, though, they have exterior outdoor stairways. They'll put them in the hall where the doors are. The hall is wide enough so that you can fit like 3 people across before, you even touch the staircase. So it's a nice wide hallway. It's just that staircase is built with giant I-beams to hold it up. And these things move at a 45-degree angle going to the 2nd story. So whenever I turned a few steps too early, my face came in contact with one of those I-beams. came in contact with it so hard that it rang, and I woke up on the wall across from it, sitting down. I knocked myself clear flat on the ground, leaning against a wall, and by then, though, I had already, I had gone and utilized my grandmother for some first aid training and became first aid certified and actually understood the operation and workings of steri strips. And I went inside, and with a friend's help, I went ahead and cleaned my wound. It hurt. Used alcohol and peroxide, put some Neosporin on it, put a few steri strips down, and put a little gauze pad over it. I was good to go. But that's when I realized I needed a helmet for more than just riding my bicycle. I needed a helmet to get around now, because that was the moment I realized my cane does not tell me what's at head height. My cane does not inform me about things that could snap into my head and draw blood, snap into my head and give me a concussion, hurt me in many ways that I would never see coming. So I swore to get a hat. And I tried an experiment out with a leather fedora that I'd gotten at the medieval fair. I loved the fedora, but it wasn't quite right. It was a little too small, and it was just a bit too thick of a hide for Florida. It was just a bit too warm for Florida. But I also had a hat that I had found in Alabama years ago. Now this hat was a Marlboro beanie, and a Marlboro beanie was pretty neat looking. It was just, it was a black beanie with the Marlboro logo stitched on it. I always thought it was cool. Picked it up at a flea market in Alabama. I just had it. I never got rid of it because I thought, it's kind of historical to have that. And I didn't want to lose it. And so I just kept it around. Well, one day a friend shows up and he's like, "Hey, I really like that hat right there, your Marlboro beanie." And I'm like, "Yeah? Do you?" And he goes, "Yeah, and I noticed that you don't really like the leather fedora that you bought at the medieval fair. It's not really doing you well. I have a leather hat that I purchased up in North Carolina, and I bought it from an Australian man who told me that he made it in Australia from kangaroo leather." And I said, "Well, bring it by." And he's like, "Well, I want to trade." And I went, "What do you want?" And he's like, "I want your Marlboro beanie." And I went, "Well, if the hat's good enough, I'll take the Marlboro. I'll trade you." So he shows up the next day with this hat. This hat made of nice, sturdy leather. It's perfectly sized for my head. And I put it on, and it was like my head had been missing it my entire life. And I gave him the Marlboro beanie. And since then, every one of these little dents and dings, if you can see it on the camera, if you can't, there's just dents and dings all over the place. This thing is bent in random locations. There's a big dent right there from where a car door flew open one day while I was walking in a parking lot and slammed into my hat, protecting me from getting hurt. There's a dent over here from where I slammed into a wall that didn't have a bottom. It was one of those like top wall areas. It was a fence they were building, but they hadn't built the bottom of the fence yet, so it was just a fence that ran around at head level. And this hat protected me from clotheslining myself on that, which I really appreciate you have for that. And I decorated it a bit. But the main part of this hat is I call it my blind man's armor. It's a hat that I wear to protect my head. And, you may think a baseball cap will work, but it won't. Things will come at you from every direction. Trust me on this. It's happened. Look, how do I get the bend on the sides here? Well, that's because things came at me from the side. You can never figure it out. I tell people I don't know what it is about the universe, but it doesn't like my head, and it keeps trying to hurt it. And so I'm making this video, and I'm explaining to you these stories to let you know, like, if you're visually impaired or blind, please, please, please consider picking up a fedora hat that has a nice thing. Mine's got a bill that runs around it that's about 2.5, 3 inches long. And this thing has protected me so much and so well throughout my years of being blind. And I want you guys to experience that. I don't see enough people wearing hats. I go to accessibility conferences. I go to the National Federation of the Blind conferences, the American Council of the Blind conferences, and there's not enough blind people wearing hats. So for Blind Awareness Month, I ask, if you see a blind person out there, ask them to get a hat. Buy them a hat. I don't know. But make sure that the blind have helmets. And blind people out there, please consider getting a hat. so that your head can be protected. But I think that's enough for now. I am Blind Prime, and you've been watching Tales of the Blind with Blind Prime. Please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing, and commenting below, and tell me what you think about blind people wearing helmets that are stylish, comfy, and keep your head dry when it rains, especially if you put mink oil on it. Well, until next Prime, peace.